New York is losing thousands of residents every single year. In LA, it's literally closing dozens of schools. Chicago is watching corporate headquarters just pack up and leave. And then there's Houston. We're doing the exact opposite. Now we've added well over 150,000 people in a single year across the greater Houston metro. And we're opening new schools. Companies are expanding here. It's a completely different story. And so today, I'm going to be breaking down the 8 ways that Houston does the exact opposite of every single metro. All right, so let's start with the big one, which is population. As you know, while cities like New York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco are all watching people pack up and leave, Houston is adding residents at a pretty aggressive pace. The greater Houston metro added over 160 residents between 2023 and 2024, making it one of the fastest growing metros in America. We're now sitting at over 7.5 million people, and projections show that Houston is continuing to climb rapidly over the next couple of decades. And when you compare that to what's happening everywhere else, New York losing hundreds of thousands of residents. Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco are all now ranking among the top metros for population loss. You start to see the pattern. And here's why that matters to you. When population grows, demand grows. Economic stability improves. The job market stays strong. When people are leaving the city, something is broken. When they're flooding in like they are here, opportunity follows. And by the way, if you're new here, my name is Travis Harris, and my team and I help people relocate to Houston every single week. We get calls, texts, and emails from buyers moving here from all over the country. And if you're thinking about making a move and you want real, honest guidance, all of my contact information is below or on the screen. Now, Houston is becoming a magnet for families, professionals, and retirees. And you really feel that when you start to look at what's happening with jobs, because this is where Houston really separates itself from the national trend. Here's the question. How many major cities can lose companies and still end up adding jobs year after year? Houston does exactly that. While states like California, Illinois, and New York are just watching companies pack up and leave, Houston has become one of the most diversified job markets in the country. Yes, energy still plays a massive role here. Houston is the energy capital of the world. You've got ExxonMobil, you've got Chevron, Shell, BP, ConocoPhillips, you've got Phillips 66, Occidental, Halliburton, Schlumberger, and dozens of global energy firms with major headquarters or operations here. But it doesn't stop there. You've also got the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical complex on earth, employing hundreds of thousands across healthcare, research, and biotech. Add in NASA and the aerospace sector, port logistics at the Port of Houston, engineering, manufacturing, finance, and tech, and you've got one of the most balanced employment bases in the U.S. Texas is home to over 50 Fortune 500 companies, and a huge concentration of them operate right here in Houston. And when a company brings in thousands of jobs, that means more housing, more schools, more restaurants, and entire communities filling up pretty fast. That growth actually feeds itself. So if you're relocating for work or a career opportunity, Houston isn't just growing, it's actually hiring. But job growth only works if people can actually afford to live here. This is another area where Houston does the opposite of most major metros. Compare Houston to cities like San Francisco or New York, which is boxed in by water, geography, or zoning, okay? Houston has room to grow, and we use it. Think about San Francisco trying to squeeze in one more condo on a tiny footprint of land. And then you've got Houston, we can still expand in multiple directions, and builders are actually use that space. That's why the housing story here is very different. When a metro can keep building, it helps prevent prices from exploding the way that they do in cities that are boxed in. Houston consistently ranks among the top metros in the country for new home construction. Entire master plan communities like Bridgeland, Town Lake, you got Ellison, Cinco Ranch, Cross Creek Ranch, Meridiana, and Sienna, just to name a few, continue to expand across the Houston metro. Because Houston can keep building, prices don't explode the way they do in landlocked or coastal cities. The median home price in Houston sits well below most major metros, especially when you compare it to Manhattan, San Francisco, or Los Angeles. And what that does is give buyers options. You're not competing with 50 offers on every home. You can choose style, timeline, location, and price point. In Houston, zoning flexibility allows for variety. Single family homes, townhomes, new builds, and mixed use communities, which keeps housing pretty accessible instead of scarce. Here's something that most people don't expect. In many metros, growth makes suburbs worse. In Houston, the master plan communities are actually getting better. Master plan communities like Bridgeland, Town Lake, Ellison, Cinco Ranch, Cross Creek Ranch, Meridiana, and Sienna continue to add amenities, parks, infrastructure, and schools while maintaining safety and quality of life. Growth isn't hurting these areas, it's actually strengthening them. Families get newer schools, better roads, and upgraded facilities instead of decline. And this is where Houston really breaks the pattern you see in other metros. In a lot of cities, as the metro grows, the quality of life in the surrounding areas actually start to slide. But here, these master plan communities keep investing in themselves. You see it in new parks, expanded amenities, upgraded infrastructure, and improved facilities, not just once, but year after year. That's why these areas keep getting more desirable as the Houston metro expands. Growth isn't stretching these communities too thin. It's giving them more resources, more demand, more reason to keep improving. Texas is investing hundreds of billions into infrastructure, and Houston is a major beneficiary. Highways are being widened, rebuilt, and rerouted. Projects like the Grand Parkway, I-10, and the I-45 North or reconstruction or reshaping the metro. Houston isn't patching 100-year-old systems, it's actually building new ones. And that's a big distinction. Most major US cities are dealing with infrastructure that was built 75 to 100 years ago. What they're doing, they're patching up century-old systems, they're repairing aging transit networks and trying to maintain roads and bridges that were designed for a completely different area. Houston isn't stuck doing that. You know what we're doing? We're rebuilding major corridors from the ground up and expanding the capacity to support long-term growth. That's why projects like the Grand Parkway, I-10 expansion, and I-45 North aren't just repairs, they're full transformation on how the region moves. That means more reliable services and fewer legacy infrastructure problems that plague older cities. And when cities invest this way, residents can feel it. You get modern, more efficient systems that are built for today's population, not yesterday's. It also avoids the constant disruptions that come with trying to repair outdated infrastructure while millions of people still rely on that every day. And all of this infrastructure growth matters most to one group in particular, families, which brings us directly to schools. While cities like Los Angeles are closing schools due to falling enrollment, Houston suburbs are opening new campuses. Districts like Katy ISD, Cypress ISD, Fort Bend ISD, Conroe ISD, and Friendswood ISD continue to expand because families just keep on moving in. And this contrast matters more than most people realize. In a lot of major cities, enrollment is falling fast. Campuses are sitting half empty, districts are talking about consolidation, and entire schools are being shut down. Okay? Growing enrollment means what? Funding, programs, and long-term stability, not closures and consolidation. Houston is doing the exact opposite. Families are moving in, enrollment is rising, and districts are building to keep up with the demand. That's a completely different signal about the future of a region. When enrollment grows, schools receive more funding. That funding supports better programs, newer facilities, more teachers, and expanded extracurriculars. It creates momentum instead of decline. And this becomes a cycle. Families move in, enrollment rises, schools improves, and that attracts even more families. You rarely see that in older legacy metros anymore. In places where enrollment is shrinking, the opposite happens. Funding drops, programs get cut, schools close, and families start leaving. Houston suburbs have flipped that cycle entirely. That's why schools are such an important indicator of long-term stability. They don't just reflect what's happening today, they show you where the region is headed next. Texas still has a zero state income tax. That alone is a massive draw. And of course, all of that growth and opportunity in the world doesn't mean much if you can't afford to keep the money that you earn. That's where taxes make another massive difference. My favorite number when it comes to taxes is zero, and that's going to be how much you pay in state income tax here in Texas. Compare that to states like Illinois, New York, or California, where state income tax can easily eat up a big portion of your paycheck. Here in Texas, that money stays with you. Add in increased homestead exemptions and property tax relief, and families keep more of what they earn compared to states like California, New York, or Illinois. Texas has expanded the statewide school district homestead exemption to over 140,000. For seniors and disabled homeowners, that exemption can go even higher. And for 100% disabled veterans, property taxes can be eliminated entirely. And here's the part that most people don't expect. While other metros, major metros keep raising taxes just to stay afloat, many Texas communities are actively trying to reduce the burden on homeowners. Instead of constantly increasing rates, the focus right now is keeping housing costs manageable over time. When you combine no state income tax with property tax relief, it adds up to some real savings year after year. That difference compounds, and it's a big reason families are able to build long-term wealth here instead of just treading water. Houston doesn't concentrate wealth into one zip code. High-income households are spread across the region, from the Woodlands to West University, Sugar Land, Katy, and Cypress. Most people assume that wealth in a major city gets packed into one small area. That's how it works in places like New York or Los Angeles, where a handful of elite neighborhoods hold the majority of the money. In New York, hundreds of thousands of millionaires are concentrated in Manhattan. In Los Angeles, wealth clusters heavily in places like Beverly Hills or Malibu. When wealth is packed that tightly, it creates massive gaps in affordability, and it also creates risk. Houston works differently. Wealth here isn't concentrated into one small area, it's spread across the region. That diversification creates stability. Okay? When one industry slows, the entire metro doesn't collapse. Opportunity isn't tied to one neighborhood or one sector. Houston works differently. Here, wealth is distributed across dozens of communities instead of being stacked into one downtown core or a single luxury zip code. You've got executives, doctors, engineers, business owners, and entrepreneurs living throughout the metro, not just one place. That means success here isn't dependent on a single industry or a single neighborhood staying hot. And that spread matters more than most people realize. When one sector cools off, the entire region doesn't grind to a halt. Housing stays more stable, schools stay funded, communities continue to grow. This is one of the biggest reasons that Houston is able to absorb economic shifts better than a lot of legacy metros. Opportunity isn't centralized, it's distributed, okay? And when wealth is spread this way, it creates something rare in a large metro, long-term stability. Families don't have to leave the region to move up. What can they do? They can upgrade neighborhoods, schools, or lifestyles without uprooting their entire lives. That's why Houston doesn't just grow, it sustains growth. And it's why downturns here tend to feel very different than they do in cities where everything is concentrated in one place. Houston optimizes for livability, not just density. Growth here improves quality of life instead of eroding it. More people, more jobs, more housing, more schools are all working together. I've watched Houston transform over time, and what's surprising isn't the growth. It's that areas that people bought in years ago are better now than when they actually moved in. Houston isn't just growing, it's winning. And the earlier you get in, the better. If you're thinking about making a move and want help finding the right area for your budget and your long-term goals, reach out. My contact information is below or on the screen. We help families relocate to Houston every single day. And if you want to find out where Houston's ultra wealthy choose to live, watch this next video I just recorded. And of course, until next time, we hope to show you around town.